the light from the auditorium hit the set, all was transformed. The throne looked like it was something out of the great temple of Zeus. Great, gilded and glorious. Sir Simon, in his green and ermine robes, looked the perfect winter god, with the sumptuous meat, fruit and oysters piled up around him in a cornucopia of festive fare. "Quickly," whispered Sir Simon, as quietly he could. "Come, little prompter, into this empty pocket. It's where I usually hide those little bits of script, that won't stick, so it's entirely fitting that you should reside there." Sir Simon held open the long flap of his robes, and Marley could see a series of patches sewn into the lining, in which a gallery of puppets were stored, like a collection of wooden saints in a fabric cathedral. One pocket was indeed free, and Marley dragged his chains up around him and ran the last few steps to the gigantic chair where Sir Simon scooped him up. There was a great commotion coming from the door. Now it more its common size, the handle was rattling and jumping as Scrooge battled with it in fury at having been woken once more. Marley settled into the pocket, tucked the chains away as best he could, and Sir Simon cleared his throat. There was a pregnant pause, and then he whispered, "Line." "What?" "Oh," said Marley, and fumbled with the papers that Linton had given him. Having found the place, he whispered, "Come in and know me better, man." "What ho! Come in and know me better, man," boomed Sir Simon with all the confidence of Tree. Marley winced at the addition to the line as the door swung open and Scrooge's angular silhouette filled the frame. Just at that instant, the coat swung shut, and Marley was hidden in the darkness. After a few seconds, his eyes began to grow accustomed to the gloom. Almost immediately, he wished they'd not. The wooden marionettes had taken on a pinched and harrowed aspect, the glass eyes staring forward, unseeing. Sir Simon repeated the line, this time without the prefix. "Come in and know me better, man." Scrooge's nasal tones were next. "Who are you, then?" he said, with undisguised haughtiness. "The ghost of the bathrobe?" Again, Sir Simon repeated the line. "Oh, know me better, man." Marley took his cue and rustled through the papers for the next line. Quickly, he found it. "I am the ghost of Christmas present. You've never seen the like of me before," Marley whispered hastily. Sir Simon parroted the line perfectly. Scrooge made an answer to it which was far from kind. "Never!" Marley continued reading from the papers. "You have never walked forth with the younger members of my family." And he would have continued, were it not for the fact that he was interrupted by Sir Simon, who trotted out the line as written perfectly well. "You have never walked forth with the younger members of my family," meaning, "for I am very young, my elder brothers, born in these later years." Evidently, he was growing in confidence. "I don't think I have," said Scrooge. "I feel sure that I would remember. Have you many brothers, Spirit?" There was a sudden, sickening silence. "More than," repeated Marley. "More than 1,800, thundered the ghost. "A tremendous family to provide for," muttered Scrooge. Sir Simon, or the ghost of Christmas present, as he was fast becoming, stood up from the throne. Marley swung along inside the coat and hung on to the hem of the open edge for safety. One of the puppets, a ragged boy with a sharp look in his eye, swung its head round and fixed its hollow stare upon Marley. This shocked him so that he could not help but exclaim, "Oh, God!" And so Simon dutifully bellowed, "Oh, God!" And then, realizing that this was not a prompt, finished it off with yet another rendition of "Know me better, man!" "Spirit," said Scrooge submissively, "take me where you will. I was taken against my will the other night by that ghost, but still I learned a great deal. I will go with you willingly if there's profit in it for me. Still the same old Scrooge, thought Marley. Sir Simon bid Scrooge hold on to his robe. A bony hand reached onto the hem close enough that Marley could touch it if he wished. There was a sudden rush, as if they were being transported to another place. During the journey, Marley tried to push the puppet back so that it was facing away from him, but only succeeded in making it loom even more ferociously over him. He also knocked the puppet on the other side of him, a half-starved looking girl with sunken eyes, so that she also swung her gaze in his direction. Marley gave a little start. Luckily, the place, a bustling market that they'd arrived at, was in quite a tumult, and so it was unlikely that Scrooge could have heard Marley's report, let alone have made anything of it, even if he did. The ghost of Christmas Present was swinging and jigging through the people, all the while laughing a deep and hearty baritone chuckle. The motion of the coat was so violent that Marley was, to all intents and purposes, being set upon by the wooden dolls around him. Limbs flailing, they battered, and the more he tried to resist them, the more blows rained down upon him. He supposed that he must have been crying out, because after a few minutes of this punishment, the coat suddenly became motionless and then opened up. The great hand of Sir Simon plucked him from the pocket and shook him hither and thither. As he did so, the strings of the puppets disentangled themselves from him and fell away. Sir Simon brought Marley up to eye level. "Come on now, little fella. We can't have you huffing and puffing away whilst I'm giving my all, now can we?" Marley looked shocked that Sir Simon would bring him out into the open like this, no matter what sounds he might be making. "Oh, don't worry," whispered Sir Simon as best he could. "That long streak of misery is currently swooning over boxes of figs and French plums." Over Sir Simon's ermine-clad shoulder, Marley could indeed see Scrooge in rhapsodies at a fruit stall. "I'm fairly sure that I can cope from now on," he said. "If in doubt, come in and know me better, man." Great little hook into the character. Yeah, thank you for that. Marley began to protest, but he was already being lowered to the ground. "Oh, but what am I to do?" asked Marley. "Do? Do?" said Sir Simon with a certain amount of humour. "Why, it's Christmas Eve. Explore the present." At which point Marley landed on the cobbles of the street. "Get out and know it better, man," rejoiced the ghost of Christmas Present, who then strode off into the crowd, clasped the hapless Scrooge around the shoulders, and swept him away. As the shade strode away, Marley found that his perspective on the world was changing. He was once more growing to his more usual size. So, this was Christmas Eve morning, the morning of the day that had just been. The heavy fog, he recalled, was shading the market from the winter sun. Now, most days, he would have holed up in some dark slum to avoid the full glare, but this was not such a time for such a torment. Everywhere he looked, Marley saw people cramming Christmas into their lives with a certain polite but desperate greed. The market itself was filled with such rich and sumptuous food that it made one quite bilious to look at it. Great piles of pies, steaming hot and glistening, buns crusted with sugar crystals, sticky dates, jewelled cherries in brandy, sweet mince pies of so many different types that you could swear there might be no two ones the same. The air was laced with sugar and the cobbles slightly tacky. It was as if whatever architect of that witch's house that had trapped two hapless but ultimately murderous German children had, in his later career, embarked on a little town planning. And like that gingerbread cottage, Marley saw it for the sticky ambush that it was. The people in the market seemed cheery and light. Marley saw that, but also he observed the casual side glances into one another's baskets, the subtle checking that your own produce was just that little bit finer, just that little bit more expensive than the next man's. One brandied fig more indicating contentment, one sugared almond less pronouncing failure. There was the air that Christmas wouldn't be Christmas unless you had spent every last brass farthing that you had until the new year, and were seen to be doing so. Marley left the market to its excesses and walked a little way along an adjoining road. Along this street there was a church, dark and austere, sitting hard against the curb of the walkway, blocking the light from the surrounding buildings. For all of its architectural haughtiness, the door of the church was open, and the sounds of singing to a merry organ played out into the street. A most inviting sound on a cold morning, thought Marley, and he was not alone in that thought, as he could see two figures, a father and a son from their silhouette, entering that hallowed place in the morning service. A church, yes, Marley thought, just the place to spend some time in sombre reflection, to gather his conflicting feelings about Scrooge's redemption and, who knows, to perhaps find some inspiration to become more charitable about this whole enterprise. So, he followed the footsteps of the man and child, approached the sanctified door in the manner of a sinner looking for comfort and sanctuary, and he entered.